Coaches Show presented by Smith's. Low prices and market fresh coming to you live from Coach's office tonight. Another week of Utah basketball. Big trip to Southern California. USC on Wednesday and UCLA coming up on Saturday. Coming off a disappointing weekend last weekend. We'll talk about all that stuff. Nominate our players of the week, our subs of the week. We'll talk a little bit about what lies ahead over the next month before we're getting down to days and almost a month out from the Pac-12 tournament, if you can believe that. So lots of things to do tonight. If you'd like to reach the program, you can do it via text at 877-353-0700. That's 877-353-0700. And we are officially in the month of February by a couple of days. And here's what I know. The days are getting longer because I look outside and there's still light. A month ago when you and I were sitting in here doing this show, it's pitch black out there by now. Now we're watching the storm roll in from the west, but the light is still out there, and we're into February
keeps
now.
Coming up.
I know. Despite what happened, despite the losses, the sun did rise. Though it was, I'm sure you were a little disappointed by the results on the weekend.
Yeah, no doubt. I felt like there was a lot of the Oregon State game that team beat us. They had really good senior guys that made plays when they needed to in spite of the number of errors that we made, but they stepped up at opportune times and make big-time plays. We couldn't keep them off the free throw line. And then I felt Thursday night that we beat ourselves. That one stung a little bit more, and maybe you take some of that in to Saturday when you're a little bit wounded. But it's halfway through conference season right now, and there's no time for a pity party. And we've got a lot of things that we need to get better at. Yeah. Identified a lot of things, and it's not consistent. The turnovers, obviously, problematic. Getting late in the shot clock. I thought we took a step back with some offensive execution when things got hard, and missed some opportune rebounds when the time came. Missed some free throws when the time came. 4-point swings. A number of things. There's just a lot of elements. And I told our guys in a meeting today, we don't have hours and hours of training camp and practice to fix a lot of things. This is really not a time to do a whole lot of talking. It's just time to go out and start making some plays and doing what they know they should do offensively and defensively, and don't hold anything back in the second half of conference.
Here's what I will say, and I'll go glass half full guy right here. You hurt yourself in a lot of ways in both those games with mistakes and long scoring droughts and other things. But your kids didn't quit fighting, and you were down double digits in the second half to Oregon. You were down double digits to Oregon State. And in both those games, you had an opportunity in the last 3 or 4 minutes to get the game a little bit closer. I think both may have been 3 in Oregon. I know it was 4 against Oregon State. 2 times. And the fight was there. You didn't make those plays you needed to make, but the kids didn't hang their heads and quit playing for you.
No, we're not going to quit. That's not going to be part of what we do. But the Oregon State game, we're down 4 with 6 minutes to go, and Said misses a layup.
Yep.
They make a layup, and it was that's the difference between it being 2 and it's 6, right? And then we come down the very next possession, turn it over, and they score. So that goes from potentially 0 to 10, just like that, and that's 2 trips down the court. And that's kind of been the nature of our season. And we just have to be far better, man. It was just, the turnover's a problem. Said missing a layup, they come down and hit one. Those are what tally up the game at the end of the night. But we just, we can't quite get out of our own way at times, and we're trying to sort it out. We let the guys run up and down some today and free up their minds and make sure we're conditioned, and we, got completely different animals this week in Southern California.
The turnovers were obviously the story on Thursday night. When you got into your offense, you ran it and played well. Same thing on the other end. When you got into your half-court defense, it was good. Saturday, it was a little surprising to me to see you guys kind of be off on offense. That really hasn't been the case with your team. You've had some off defensive days, but the offense just looked a little out of sync. And I think Jimmy made mention of it on the broadcast. It looked passive at times. And maybe you said in the post-game show you were a little surprised by the man-to-man defense. You thought maybe they'd play you zone, but were you surprised by the passiveness, at least early in your offense?
Yeah, there were different things that took place, when we needed to screen in order to execute, we didn't screen, and it seemed like it's a big picture, passive, end of shot clock, didn't look out of sync, whatever it is. there's just a lot of little things along the way that kind of lead to that. I thought we passed up guys that should have been aggressive with opportunities or open with shots, maybe a little bit tentative, and they tried to do something beyond what they needed to do.
Right.
But anything, and I went through the film in depth yesterday, anything that required a screen, I'll be darned. You know, it's just like we just went down and whiffed and really didn't try to get the guy open and put a little bit more pressure on ourselves. They jumped Cedric in all the pick and roll stuff, and we didn't do a great job of getting the ball out of his hands and then going and making some plays. You know, Donnie had 4 turnovers in that first half and got sped up, and you know, it was a rough one, no doubt. We got to stay in the fight and jump in the saddle and, you know, and keep playing. That's the good news about that game, is it's not a season-ending thing, and we gotta keep building. And there was just something wrong, you know, mojo-wise. And on Saturday, we had really good players that we were trying to keep from scoring.
Right.
You know, and sometimes that puts a little bit of heat, you know, guarding those guys, get them to miss. There were a few times we'd get a rebound and they just took it away from us. You know, stripped Jace once, took it away from Riley. Because when we did, just like we said, when we got rebounds, we scored a lot early in transition. It was when we took the ball out of the net that we kind of dealt with and got bogged down late in shot clock. It wasn't fun, but it's something we can fix.
And to be very fair, in the Oregon State game, there was also times where you guys were in really good defensive positions, and whether it was Ethan Thompson or even Trace Tinkle, they just made a really good, sometimes good offense can beat good defense, and there were a couple of times where you guys were in pretty good defensive position. They just made a really good play.
Well, you know, I think about up 4, and we had a heck of a possession, and Tinkle hit a shot from about 28 or 30 feet.
Yeah, you had 2 guys on him. You're 2 seconds on the shot clock, and he just raises up and knocks down a big shot.
You know, and that's at the point where that building is starting to come alive a little bit, and if we get that stop, then, you know, we're getting it down to a 1-possession game, and boom, that was 7. And then the next time we cut it to 4, Redmanovich got an offensive rebound, and we were kind of scrambling and kicked it out to Tinks, and he hit another 3. So, you know, a little bit of a perfect storm, and, you know, the turnovers blended in with, you just kind of name it, at whatever little stretch, there was something that we weren't sharp enough, and we've got to be better if we want to win games like that. There's no question about it.
You know, I'll use some of your words back on you now. You're
Okay.
never quite as good as you think you are. You're never quite as bad as you think you are. Came off the Bay Area sweep, feeling pretty good about things. You just got swept at home. You're still somewhere in between.
Yeah, then that's it, you know, and a prime example, we had a good week of practice. I thought we were ready. And, you know, Oregon's press, that was a punch in the mouth with as many turnovers as we had, and then it was a different animal. But like I told our guys, there's so many different facets of a game that, you know, you've got to be ready when something rears its head. And another, my favorite one of them is that there are no little things.
That's my favorite of yours.
There are
too.
no,
Yeah.
I mean, there just aren't, you know, no matter how you a free throw. And we missed so many over the weekend, front end to 1-and-1s. And we shoot so many free throws in practice, you know, and as you're watching the game, it's Riley front end, Donnie front end, Cedric misses a front end, Jace. It's not just the one you miss. It's the other one that you don't get a chance. So it's, you know, those are so-called little things, the rebounds, the turnovers, travels.
Not setting a screen when a guy needs a screen, that's a little thing. And
Yeah.
how many times did you not do that on Saturday? A bunch.
A bunch of times that we whiffed, and, you know, maybe from a general fan's perspective, all you see is us kind of getting lumber down, and like, man, they just don't get, well, you got to be precise. And we spent a good hour on that in practice today. We really juiced up our defense and said, hey, this is a defensive drill at the same time as it's an offensive drill. Let's just start getting better in a lot of different components. And once the guys kick in and start screening. Now, the crazy part of it is, in practice today, we probably had 10 illegal screens because guys are really wanting to screen people.
Right.
And we don't have refs out there. We've got to do it in a smart fashion without moving and sticking a chicken wing out there and getting a guy, because that's just another turnover, another form of a turnover.
The illegal screen, to me, has become the new block charge. It's such a hard call to make, and sometimes it's not on the guy setting the screen. It's on the guy that's getting the ball who has to wait that extra second so the screen is called. But I think a lot of times, and I saw it in your game on Saturday, there were 2 or 3 times where illegal screens were set, and then when you looked at the replay, there really wasn't one. I think they called Jace for an illegal screen one time.
That was a tough one.
Yeah.
You know, when the defense runs into the
That's what I'm
screener
saying, yeah.
and blows the whole thing up and then kind of falls down, there's a lot of players that are getting rewarded for they call it just blow it up, and some places teach it. If a guy's trying to set a screen on you, just run into him as hard as you can and kind of flip your head back, and then they'll call it, because Jace wasn't moving. There was nothing illegal about that screen at all. So, you know, it's a game of errors. We've got, you know, referees are going to make mistakes. I had some problems with the same official in one play calling a travel and coming down in front of us, and the same travel and there's no travel. So that I have a hard time with. Can see if it's a different ref or something, but you know, it kind of wore on us a little bit with some of that, and some of the block charge calls. I thought, you know, kind of coin flips. But one thing, and not a cop out. You know, this isn't professional basketball where there's a lot of perfection.
Right.
We've still got 18 to 20-year-old kids, and sometimes I, as a coach, forget that. You know, you want them to be perfect and you want them to be dialed and ready, but we're dealing with, you know, and I've met with some of our young kids, and there's a lot going on, and you can't expect. Now, Tinkle and Stevie Thompson, I can remember when those guys were freshmen.
Yeah.
And we whipped them pretty good, and they made a lot of mistakes. And now you see them 3 years later, and they're the guy, they get the calls. That's what I told Riley and Timmy. I said, you got to earn your stripes. You're a freshman, and if it's kind of a coin flip on whether Trace came in and lifted his elbow and illegally fouled you while he was posting up, or you responding to that, seniors usually going to get the call. And so some of it's that, but we're hanging with them, and the kids are wonderful to coach. I mean, we had a really, you know, spirited and engaged practice. They're pretty easy to roll into the room, and some film and everything, so we're in it for the right reasons. We just have to start making some plays.
Yeah, and I can remember there was a time early in your tenure where a young kid named Brandon Taylor and another young kid named Jordan Loveridge, another young kid named Dakari Tucker were out there running around, taking their lumps. And then by the time they were seniors, those calls kind of went back the other way. They knew how to play that game, and they knew how to play that thing. So
yeah.
it really is all about going through the process.
Yeah.
There's very few shortcuts in life or in basketball.
Yeah, amen.
It's hard to jump those steps, isn't it?
Yeah, and
you better be a pretty elite talent if you're making those jumps.
Yeah, and even then, there's guys that are probably wondering just exactly why they made that jump, you know, when you're talking about moving on to the next level. There's just so much to learn about it. You know, it's exciting that we've got as many young kids playing the minutes they are. You know, sometimes you kind of pay the price, and especially when you go against a veteran team, you know, things get exposed a little bit, but, you know, hopefully these guys stick around for their you know, tenure. I think they're program guys. And then to have some of those reps underneath their belt, a guy like Booth is, you know, not feeling really good after this weekend. The previous weekend was really good.
Great, yeah.
And that's part of being a freshman. And so as long as he stays in it and keeps grinding, he's going to be better for it in the long run. And the future's really bright for those guys.
We'll take our first time out here on the Coaches Show, which is, of course, brought to you by Smith's and also brought to you by Bud Light, the official sponsor of Utah Athletics, needing to remind you to enjoy responsibly. We'll come back. We'll talk about the players who played well last week, and a player of the week and a sub of the week, and also what Saturday meant. And there's an ongoing fundraiser we told you a little bit about last week with Utah basketball. It's going to go on for a couple of more days, so we'll tell you about that as well. All coming up on the Coaches Show right here from Learfield College, IMG College. That's our play of the week, brought to you by Pepsi and Code Red. That's how you do the do. Mountain Dew Code Red. That was the Timmy Allen drive, the up and under, spin it off the glass, and then the and one. It's quite a play. I think the Pac-12 Network recognized that as one of the plays of the week in Pac-12 basketball. I think he's our obvious choice, isn't he, for our player of the week, our innovative player of the week, brought to you by University of Utah Health?
Yep, he sure is. He was really productive, played a lot of minutes.
He played your most minutes Saturday. I think he played 38 minutes Saturday against Oregon State.
Yep.
Excuse me.
And we need to find him a few more minutes rest. We tried to time some of that, but we got into foul trouble. Oregon State, we had like 4 guys with 2 fouls at halftime, and so didn't have a lot of options. And coming off the bench, the old sub of the week.
Yeah, well, our player of the week is going to be Timmy Allen, so that's brought to you by University of Utah Health, 16 convenient neighborhood centers. Got a game plan for your family's health. UVUhealth.org is where you find them. Yeah, now we got to come up with a sub of the week. Something from Throwaway Thursday?
Well, Donnie, was
he was pretty good on Thursday night.
Pretty good on Thursday, and he actually tweaked his back and had some back issues. So, maybe we can give him a little pass for not being as dialed in, with some of the turnovers and. Still consistent. Let's remember Donnie's a sophomore.
Yeah.
That's not far from a freshman. So sometimes you start expecting a little bit much. But, I think we need more out of the bench. We need more out of our starters. There's no doubt about it, all the way around, and may tinker with the lineup a little bit this week. But I think Donnie's probably the Subway sub of the week.
Yeah, we'll go with Donnie as our Subway sub of the week. Get a $1 drink with any wrap that you get, a signature wrap at Subway. Stop by and see him today and save at Subway. Let's go back to Timmy for just a second. He had 24 and 6, I believe, on Saturday. That's a new career high in points. His previous was 22. He looks more and more comfortable out there. It looks, to use the old sports cliche, it looks like the game slowed down for him a little bit. Early in the year, he'd get sped up. He'd get into that lane, not quite sure what to do with the ball. And
he's done a really good job, Bill, of getting under control and pivoting and finding some guys.
Yeah.
Our coaches are working on that, especially with the perimeter guys. Being under control. And then I thought, then maybe from looking at Saturday's film, we were actually too under control. Like we would get into the gap, come to a 2-foot jump stop, pivot, pass it to a guy and not move. And if you're going to draw and kick, like the true draw and kick thing is a pass and your movement continues and then the next guy comes in. So we've really been preaching about being under control. Last thing you want to do is charge into somebody.
Right.
But there's also a lot of times that nobody's in front of you. And you're trying to set up a teammate to give them an angle and get them out of your way. So we've got to find kind of the happy medium between those two things. And that, I think, will help some of our stagnant offense, when we get late in the clock again like we did. That's not fun, We got to, again, you got to enter offense with some crispness, with the sense of urgency. And I do know this, a lot of guys confuse it and think that you only play hard on defense. And you got to play really hard on offense to go earn something, especially with teams that are solid defensively. And Oregon State is. They've got, one of the better shot blockers, a wall guy, get some veteran guys, great hands. Stevie and Ethan Thompson are great at stripping you. So, that's something that we've got to improve and add a little bit more of the pace and quickness of getting the ball popping and a little bit less 2-foot jump stop, fundamental.
What have you seen with Timmy? Why do you think? Is it just the reps? Is it just going through it? Or has there been something that you've seen change that he's worked on in his game?
No, I think there's a few things that lead a player. I do think he's more comfortable in roles and he's out there. He's physical, number one, so he's able to kind of withstand some of the abuse.
Right.
And the pounding. You get some young kids, and this is where if you don't have a real physical body, you can kind of get beat up. At this point in the season when we've been going a long time. And I think the other part that I'm sure people understand, but from a coach's perspective, Timmy's a real cerebral player too, and he's got to learn the 3 spot and the 4 spot, which are 2 completely different positions, and there's a fair amount to remember. And he doesn't mess up execution very often. It's one of those things that you can tell he spends time off the court, and some of the other guys, there's times where we're trying to execute something, whether we're not screening, entering it properly, going to the right spot. There's just a lot that goes on with the execution, and he's been solid with it. So it's allowed him to flourish, and it allows us to keep him on the floor. When we get into it, when you look at points per possession when he's on the floor, he's one of the leaders on our team. And defensively, he's one of the leaders on our team. So he's netting out really well. The one thing is he's getting fouled a lot, as is Jace. There's guys that need to step up, and I don't know how many free throws we shot today, and we try to do them when you're tired.
Right.
So you're in the middle of a scrimmage, and let's get to the line. But that's one of the things when two of your highest volume foul shooters, aren't shooting a great percentage, that's a problem. So that's something that we can control and improve and put a few more points on the board.
So Timmy Allen, our player of the week, and Donnie Tillman will be our Subway sub of the week. Before we go to break, Saturday was the Huntsman Strong game. You guys, as a program, have had the hope.huntsmancancer.org website going now for about 10 days. I think I checked it this afternoon. You were up near $35,000, which is fantastic. I think you tell our listeners a couple of your friends from around basketball have made a few donations.
Well, I went through my contact list on my phone, and it wasn't really, I don't like doing it, but a lot of people hit me up at the same time. So, I just spread the word, and former players, that have been involved with John. But, our buddy Bill Walton, he pitched in $250, and Danny Ainge out in, GM of the Celtics, he put in some money. A lot of my friends have been pitching in. I don't want to forget anybody, but it's kind of neat. You can watch the names.
Yeah, they kind of scroll on by when you go. Again, it's hope.huntsmancancer.org, and I think it's going to be up for a couple more days, right?
Yeah. Yep, and every buck goes to the research. This isn't, putting money in any, pockets where, administrative fees and stuff. So they're making some great progress up on the Hill. It's unbelievable, some of the breakthroughs and things that they're figuring out. So we'd love to bump that up and challenge everybody. Every dollar counts, obviously, but there's something that's kind of got a great little ring to it in the form of $50,000.
Yeah.
And then we can write a check for a total of 100 and really help them out.
Yeah, Larry and Jan are going to be matching whatever the final total is from you guys that are out there making the donations. Larry and his wife Jan and their foundation will match that and write that nice big check to the Huntsman Cancer Institute. So again, hope.huntsmancancer.org, and it's all very simple. You just get there, you click on your donation amount, and it's right there like that. It's very easy to do, and it all stays right here in the community. All right, we'll take a time out. We'll come back on the other side. USC and UCLA this weekend. We'll talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to ask Larry, we've got a little something in the basketball world coming up this weekend called the trade deadline. Ooh. Every basketball player hears their name called around this time, and they shudder. Am I going to be staying here? Am I going to be going there? Larry was part of a trade, though it wasn't necessarily at the trade deadline. It had to do with something else, so we'll have him tell his trade story from the NBA days and more coming up right here on the Coaches Show, presented by Smith's. Live of the game presented by Nissan. Customize your Rogue and team colors for your chance to win it. Enter to win, and the official rules, you go to nissanusa.com/Rogue sweepstakes. No purchase necessary. It ends 3/31/19. So we'll talk a little bit about UCLA and USC coming up here in a minute. That's the trip this week. USC on Wednesday night late. It's a 9 o'clock Mountain Time tip-off, 8 o'clock at the Galen Center. Jimmy and I will have the call of that one, then Saturday afternoon at Poly Pavilion. But we're in that time. In fact, Thursday is the old NBA trade deadline. And it's got to be one of those unsettling times, especially in today's day and age with social media and websites. You know, you could be a player like Kyle Kuzma, one of your former players, hearing your name kicked about as part of trades, which is a little unsettling, especially if you like where you are. Now, you were traded not once, but a couple of times in your career, the first one coming on draft day.
Yeah, draft day. So I think I've told you the story. I was called the night before the draft by the brass at Portland, and Portland was rolling, and they were in the finals, and it was one of the closest cities to Montana. And they said, hey, we want you to sleep really well tonight, the night before the draft, and the worst case scenario, we're going to pick you 24th, the last pick of the first round. There were only 24 teams. And so we were having a nice little gathering at my brother's house and watching it. And that was back in the day when you only had the first round was on ESPN.
Right.
And there were 10 rounds. So they get to pick 24, and it's Portland Trailblazers select Arvydas Sabonis. And then they picked 3 more guys and went off the air. They went to the pick 27. Dennis Rodman was 27. And then nothing on TV, and I hadn't been picked yet. So my agent called me right after that and said, well, Chicago drafted you 28th, and I was sky high about that with Jordan and that deal.
Yeah. This is 86.
86. And so I doing a bunch of media at the house talking about Chicago. 2 hours later, I've been traded to Portland because apparently Portland had an opportunity to get Sabonis and get me in a trade. So I was back to being excited about the Trailblazers. And 2 weeks went by after I was Trailblazers property, and I was trying to make a summer plan, like what, am I going to camp? What do I have to do? And I called them, and a secretary informed me that I'd been traded to San Antonio, but they just hadn't released the information yet. So I was like, oh my goodness,
so
welcome to...
It wasn't the team president, wasn't the coach, wasn't the GM. The secretary who answered the phone said, oh yeah, you're going to San Antonio.
I said, yeah, my name's this, and I think I'm on your team. I'm just kind of wondering what the... No, there's a trade that's gone through, but we can't announce it until such and such date. So, and San Antonio was not a good team.
Right.
They were.
This was not David Robinson, Tim Duncan, Greg Popovich, all that stuff.
No, they were one of the worst teams in the league. So the good news is, once I got through the trade deadline, they were trying to move a bunch of our vets. That's the other thing you learn business-wise. And I was playing pretty well in practice, but I couldn't get on the floor. And they were trying to trade a bunch of guys. And once the trade deadline hit and they couldn't unload all those contracts, then I started with Johnny Dawkins and Walter Berry and Kevin Duckworth, four rookies. And I played. I remember the last game of the year was in Portland, and I went to the dog track with Bobby Weiss, our coach. A bunch of players went, and Bobby, he said, I'm going to play you 48 minutes tomorrow just to see if you got it in you. And he did. And it was cool. It was an opportunity to play some minutes, but it wasn't a lot of fun because we didn't win.
So you didn't get to play with Jordan or Drexler?
No. Got dunked on plenty of times by them. But it gives you a sense for the business side of things. Yeah. And I think Kuz is probably getting a little bit of an idea. Yeah. And I'm not saying he's getting traded. The rumors are out there, but you realize pretty quick that some of the brotherhood and loyalty that you feel in college is real.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when you move on to the next level, we love you right up until we can get somebody that we think is going to help us more. And so we'll see. It should all come to a head in the next few days.
Well, if there's any consolation for Kuzma, he may be heading to New Orleans with the guys he's been playing with for the last 2 years, because it sounds like the Lakers are, if they make that deal, are unloading just about the entire draft class. So Ingram, Kuzma, Ball, and maybe Josh Hart as a group may all be going together, so at least they'll know each other.
Yeah,
Because you know that when you move from team to team, you play against guys, but you don't really know them. It takes a little time to get to know them in the locker room. At least they'll step in there and know some of the guys.
yeah, no, but you still have to learn a whole new system and terminology and different things. So, still one of my favorite days was getting traded here from Milwaukee to the Jazz.
Tell you were just telling me at the break you had a little premonition. Something
Yeah,
might be happening.
I was at our lake house in Montana, and I was on the John Deere riding mower all day, like 4 hours. And the whole time I was riding on that mower, I had it's like this voice was telling me, "I'm getting traded. I'm getting traded. I'm getting traded." And then I finished, and I went up and kind of got cleaned up, and it might have been answering machine days. Yeah. And I checked my deal, and my agent had called a bunch of times, and I called him, and they said that Jay Humphreys and myself got traded to Utah for Eric Murdoch and Blue Edwards. And so to get to come to a franchise that, obviously to play with John and Carl, and I think the year before they just opened the Delta Center, and I don't think they lost a home game. I think they were 41-0 at home. So it was fun, to come out west again and be able to battle against Carl and practice and play with Mark Eaton and some of those guys. It was a lot of fun.
So we'll keep an eye on the NBA stuff coming up over the next couple of days. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. The games this week are in Southern California, where Kuz is living for now. Hope we'll keep our fingers crossed he gets to stay with LeBron and company. Utah and USC, Utah and UCLA. We'll talk about them next. This is the Coaches Show presented by Smith's from Learfield IMG College. Cedric finding his range from deep. They'll need some of that and more against USC and UCLA. We welcome you back into the Coaches Show tonight, presented by Smith's. We're live from the basketball center here on campus. So it's USC. It's one of those weird Wednesday. I don't think we've had a Wednesday yet, first Wednesday, and a late game on Wednesday against USC at the Galen Center. They're like a lot of teams in this league, up and down. When they've played well, they've played really well, but they've also lost some games. So I know you guys have begun your scout on the Trojans. What have you seen?
Yeah, well, it's the first team that we've come across that the two leading scorers are their center and their four-man. Boatwright and I don't know Krystkowiak, not to be confused with Radmanovic from this last week. But that's a challenge when those and Krystkowiak is a guy that's getting 10 rebounds a game. Boatwright's got great range; he can post you up. And then they got shooters, around them. But it's kind of an interesting plan. Usually it's a ball in hand guy that puts up a lot of points, at least in this league, the teams that we've played.
And that's been the deal the last few years with USC, with those guys at the point. They've had good point guard play, good wing play.
Yep.
Boatwright's been a good player, but it's been mainly a perimeter team, and now it sounds like they're going on the 4 and 5 spot.
Yeah, those guys, 20 points each, a game between them, and it's a lot like when you look at production, it's Stevie Thompson and Tinkle, except they're the big guys. So shift gears a little bit with that one, and they're a physical team. They'll play a bunch of different defenses, but we've got to have an interior presence. There's no doubt about it. They're not overly deep. Usher's a guy that left the program. They've had some other guys leave the program, and things haven't gone their way. So the heavy minutes. Thornton's a point guard in the backcourt that's like a 3-to-1 assist to turnover guy that gets a lot of guys shots. Matthews on the perimeter, and Shaquan
Aaron.
Number 0.
Shaq Aaron. Yeah.
Those guys can fill it up and attack. So, like a lot of teams, when you go out on the road, got to have a road tempo mentality and keep them out of transition and have a pretty good plan. So we're trying to tweak a few things moving forward.
And the good news, too, is you guys have had a pretty good road mentality this year. 3 or 4 on the road that you've won, including a win at Arizona State. One player you didn't mention that's been in and out of the lineup for him, but he is a talent, is Kevin Porter.
Yeah. Well, he's
true freshman.
Yep, and one of those kids, like a lot of freshmen, like we talk about with our guys, that it's a lot harder than you think. And I think some disciplinary reasons or something was suspended, was having a hard time not playing minutes, but now he's moved himself up, I think, to 4th on the team in scoring at almost 10 points a game, and he's he can get it going and hurt you. So he's a physical specimen, a wing that gets out and runs. We got to be ready for whatever he has in his backpack.
That's kind of an apropos description of USC in general. They're one of those teams in this league that can, when they get it going, they can really get it going. It could be a 2-point or 3-point game, and you look up and all of a sudden they're up 15 on you because they're a team that can score in bunches. Now, that can work against them as well because they'll miss in bunches too, but when they get that thing going, they can be dangerous, can't they?
Yeah, and they do a nice job of sharing the ball. They're one of the leaders in our conference with assists, and they don't turn it over very often. So, you got to be dialed in to defend them, and the big passing between those two bigs is good. It's problematic if you try to double one of them because they are willing passers, and they've got that shooting threat around the perimeter. So it's it's a little bit of a problem, and it's something different for us that you got to be ready for. And then obviously you move Saturday into another group of athletes that are much the same way. They're a lot of waves, a lot of ups and downs, and when they're good, they're really good, and when they're not, and it's maybe a little bit like the Utes right now.
Is there an advantage? Well, Wednesday isn't the ideal day to play, but it does give you that extra day between games. You're going to have Thursday and Friday to get ready for that Saturday afternoon games. When you play the Thursday-Saturday games, you don't really have much. That next day is a little regeneration, a little bit of classroom work.
Right.
If there is an advantage to playing on Wednesday, is it that you get that extra day to prep in Southern California?
I think so. That question was asked me in the post game on Saturday. What are we going to do when we're there? Well, instead of only having the one day in between that you can't get much accomplished, you have one day in between that can be a lot of mental, and then instead of the practice day being here on Wednesday,
Right.
it's in Southern California on Friday. And I think you can probably have a little bit better game plan for UCLA with that extra day, but then you're getting kind of short on the USC prep. But we're pretty dialed into it over the weekend and the staff. So you don't really want to be on the road that extra day, but it's better than in years past when we've had so many of those. We used to play Wednesday and Sunday at times, and that's too many days in a hotel and class missed and different things. So we miss almost a whole week. We'll go to a few classes tomorrow morning, but we're flying out tomorrow. So it becomes a little bit of a problem academically.
Yeah, and by the way, the league's bunched up right now. We'll talk a little bit about that in the next segment. Tonight's show brought to you by Smith's. Wednesday night, 9 o'clock Mountain Time tip time from the Galen Center, myself and Jim Soto, and then Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock from Pauley Pavilion. We'll take a timeout. When we come back, the league is very bunched. There's two definitives right now in the Pac-12 Conference. Who's the best team and who's the worst team? Everything else in between, even after last weekend, still very jumbled. And despite the fact that the Utes lost a couple of games, they're still right in the thick of it. We'll talk about that next here on the Coaches Show, presented by Smith's from Learfield IMG College. That was a weird sequence. Donnie shot an air. It may have been altered. Maybe one of the blocks by their big man, but then Parker caught it with about 2 seconds left on the shot clock, and he fired that ball in against Oregon State the other day. Welcome back into the Coaches Show, presented by Smith's. League's bunched up right now. Washington's got a 3-game lead, I think, at the top, but then there's a 3-way tie for second, and you guys are in a 3-way tie for, I guess it would be 5th or 4th, whatever that is. I think it's Washington at the top, and then it's ASU, Oregon State, and USC, who are 6 and 3, and you guys, UCLA and Arizona, are all at 5 and 4.
Yeah, no, it's a mess. It's a mess.
Which means it's just changing on a week. It's kind of what we thought at the beginning of the year. I didn't know that Washington would necessarily run away with it the way they have, but they play good basketball. I think they've won 11 straight now, but everybody else is just kind of cannibalizing each other, and you don't know what's necessarily going to happen week to week.
Yeah, and I mentioned it to our team post-game. Our goal is going to remain to get into the NCAA tournament. And I feel like, and our team feels like, if you had to play a best of 7 against Washington, we probably aren't going to win. But I'm not sure you can convince me that we couldn't win any game, on any given night.
On a neutral floor.
And when you get to Vegas, as you know, there's a 50-50 chance that you don't even play Washington.
Right.
So if things match up, maybe somebody knocks them off on their side of the bracket, that this thing's open game. And, we're tied with Arizona. We played Arizona State's a game ahead of us. We beat them on the road. So Oregon State just beat us. They're a game ahead of us. So it's not like anything is out of reach for anybody. I hope everybody's feeling that way within our program, because I do think there'll be a certain percentage of teams in the league that don't get better from this point forward. Right. Just kind of play it out. And that was my message to our guys. Let's get better and keep making sure that we're making progress and playing our best basketball here in another month. And then again, anything can happen down there. And so that's where our drive and our hopes continue to be.
3-question, 2-man weave next as we wrap it up on the Coaches Show from IMG Learfield.
Try to stump me. Do I have a shot clock again?
Oh, welcome back into the show. We've got 3 minutes. The clock is on. Here we go. In honor of the Super Bowl yesterday, your Rams pick doesn't look very good now.
No. It was more of an anti-New England pick.
You'll Patriot fatigue.
Yeah.
Who was your favorite NFL player as your child?
Oh, my. That's so easy.
Okay.
Walter Payton.
Oh, yeah, sweetness.
Sweetness. I just loved watching him with this little pacifier in his mouth, the old-fashioned mouthpiece, and just run people over. And I've been a Bears fan because of Walter Payton even. I was crushed this last year when the field goal hit the upright.
Oh, man.
But I've got Walter Payton's signature card, number 34 out of 34 on a set.
It's pretty cool. It's good to see his family with the Walter Payton Man of the Year award, Chris Long winning that over the weekend. What was your rep as a player when you were in the NBA? What was your reputation? What was the scouting report? What was the rep on Larry?
Well, I never paid. I was talking to my boys about this. Like my oldest son was asking me about playing, and I've never really visited. It was always survival.
Yeah.
Like you played power forward in that era, and I played with Terry Cummings, who was the small forward.
Yep.
And it didn't matter. Terry didn't play a whole lot of defense, so I always got the best. I would guard Dominique or Charles Barkley or the big power forward, Karl Malone or whoever it was, so that Terry didn't get in foul trouble. And it was really just like wake up in a hotel room and who we playing tonight. And I never said a peep to hardly anybody. But I think I played really hard. I've had a lot of former players that you run into now that say, "Man, you were something to play, against," and we were always kind of afraid of you. And but I didn't have the talent, or the athletic ability, and I stayed near the ground a lot and just worked my butt off, I thought.
30 seconds, more important in a player, right along those same lines, talent or work ethic?
Well, I'll take work ethic,
yeah.
Because you're not talking about some cultural issues, and we've talked about here, let's recruit some great kids and they have talent. But you can improve talent. It's really hard to improve some of that drive and character.
Good questions.
Pretty good, buddy.
All right, thank you, man.
Yes, sir.
I'll see you Wednesday night.
9 out of 10.
There we go, 9 out of 10. We'll see you Wednesday night from the Galen Center in Southern California. This is the Coaches Show from Learfield IMG College.